On a stormy night in the Demon Lord's castle, the ruler summoned his 4 generals: Ermender, the flaming Gat; Sylphid, the storm conjurer; Jinnum, the edgy emo knight; and an unexpected newcomer, the guardian deity of water summoned from another realm. To everyone's shock, the chosen one was an average loser, smelly salaryman, Uchimura. Uchimura's life had been far from extraordinary. After graduating, he tirelessly job-hunted until landing a position. Despite his efforts, his boss dismissed him as a failure, just like how your parents viewed you. Though Uchimura was sent abroad to oversee the construction of a factory, a daunting task he managed to complete despite being overwhelmed. Yet, instead of recognition, he was given another challenging project. Exhausted and disheartened, Uchimura found himself sitting by the roadside, sighing deeply, until his ticket to a new life accident catapulted him into this new world. Unlike the typical isekai hero welcomed by goddesses or priests, Uchimura landed directly in front of the Demon Lord, who stood there menacingly. The Demon Lord wasted no time explaining his purpose. He wanted Uchimura to serve as one of the big 4 generals in his army, even giving him the title of overseas expatriate. Uchimura was baffled as to why the Demon Lord chose someone like him when there were clearly better options. The Demon Lord, however, revealed that he had conducted an extensive background check and was impressed by Uchimura's unacknowledged achievements and relentless work ethic. While flattered by the recognition, Uchimura still hesitated to join. The Demon Lord sweetened the offer with enticing perks: a generous salary, the authority of a company director, the freedom to assemble his own team, and some snow demon cheeks to clap. As a final assurance, he promised that if Uchimura refused, he would safely return him to his world, even though he would be presumed dead. Touched by this unexpected respect, Uchimura was tempted but doubted his worthiness due to his past. Sensing his hesitation, the Demon Lord dismissed Earth's critics as fools who failed to value hard work. Rising from his throne, he passionately declared his intention to help Uchimura unlock his full potential, promising they would achieve greatness together. Before Uchimura could respond, Ermender interrupted, voicing doubts about a mere human serving as a general. Sylphid and Jinnum echoed her concerns. To settle the matter, the Demon Lord proposed a test to prove Uchimura's value. Disregarding orders, Ermender attacked Uchimura with overwhelming power, knocking him unconscious. The Demon Lord intervened, clarifying that Uchimura's strength lay in his intellect, not physical prowess. He revealed his plan to unite nearby races, such as salamanders and werewolves, but lacked skilled negotiators for the task. To test Uchimura, he assigned him to persuade the Minotaurs to join the demon army. Reluctantly, Uchimura prepared for the mission, accompanied by Ermender. Along the way, she mocked him relentlessly, calling him slow and feeble. Though intimidated, Uchimura recalled the Demon Lord's words and resolved to prove himself. When they reached the Minotaur chief's chamber, the massive doors alone nearly shattered Uchimura's resolve. Ermender teased him, warning of the Minotaur's aggression, but opened the doors herself. Summoning his courage, Uchimura entered only to be greeted by the sight of no other than her glorious mother. Ermender stepped forward, claiming she could handle the negotiation. However, her confidence quickly unraveled into chaos as her brash approach turned the discussion into a heated argument. The chief, Lord Talius, eventually threw them out. Ermender tried to save face, insisting her strategy was effective and that Talius simply refused their terms. Exhausted but undeterred, Uchimura decided it was up to him to prove his worth and succeed where others had failed. Hearing the Minotaur chief's angry grumbles, Uchimura decided to withdraw temporarily and return later with a plan. Haunted by the intimidating image of Talius, Uchimura struggled to focus. At a nearby bar, memories of his salaryman days surfaced. Clients who repeatedly said no but eventually agreed after persistent efforts. Inspired, he finished his drink, resolved to approach Talius again with a fresh strategy. Meanwhile, Ermender reported Uchimura's supposed failure to the Demon Lord, who urged patience. Skeptical, she hurried back to Talius' chamber, where she found Uchimura holding a sack of hay he referred to as trash. Confused, she asked about his intentions, but he explained that the hay was crucial for his next discussion with Talius. When she dismissed his idea, warning that Talius was impossible to negotiate with, Uchimura calmly reassured her. He explained that negotiation isn't about overpowering a client, but about bridging the cognitive gap between both parties. He emphasized the importance of building trust, starting with direct communication and eye contact. Despite Ermender's doubts, Uchimura entered Talius' chamber with confidence, hand in hand, promising to make things work. Seeing his newfound determination, Ermender realized he was no longer the timid, self-doubting man she had first met. The next morning, Ermender stormed into Talius' chamber after hearing no updates all night. Inside, she found hay scattered everywhere and assumed Uchimura's negotiations had taken place. To her surprise, Uchimura revealed that Talius had gone to meet the demon lord to finalize their alliance. Shocked, she demanded to know how he achieved this so quickly. Uchimura explained that Talius had always been open to negotiations, but is secretly at Sunday rejecting offers to test Erminder's resilience. Her impatience and tendency to storm off had led her to believe negotiations had failed each time. Uchimura, however, had taken a different approach. He spent the night understanding Talia's concerns and using calm, persistent dialogue to build trust and find common ground. Later, Talius and the demon lord returned, confirming the alliance. Talius apologized for his earlier hostility and praised Uchimura's skillful handling of the negotiations. Offering a firm handshake, he expressed his gratitude. Impressed, the demon lord declared Uchimura's test a success and officially appointed him as one of the Big Four generals. As a symbol of his new position, the demon lord gave Uchimura a golden bracelet, marking the beginning of his role as the kingdom's overseas envoy. Though Erminder still harbored doubts about Uchimura's abilities, she begrudgingly acknowledged his achievement. With many negotiations ahead, the two set off together. Watching their budding teamwork, the demon lord felt hopeful that Uchimura and his generals would bring his army closer to its ultimate potential. Uchimura is beginning to adjust to his role as a demon general. It's nice to have his own office and a supportive superior, but this place still feels unfamiliar. Since he's now officially one of the generals, he decides to introduce himself to the others. He heads to Sylphid's room, knocks, and is surprised when a girl answers. She introduces herself as Sylphid's assistant and informs him that Sylphid is too busy to meet. Though disappointed, Uchimura understands and plans to try again later. Before he can leave, Erminder approaches with urgent news. The demon lord has a task for him. The demon lord wants Uchimura to help secure support from nearby demi-human nations to strengthen the demon army. Among them, the Ogre tribe is key, as their military power rivals that of the demon army. The demon lord aims to negotiate an alliance, but the ogres are known to be tough negotiators. However, with Uchimura handling the situation, the demon lord is confident an agreement will be reached and grants him full authority on the matter. Erminder offers to accompany him to the Ogre tribe. However, Uchimura insists on meeting Jinum first, as she leads the demi-human division and may have useful information about the ogres. Erminder agrees but refuses to approach Jinum due to a long-standing grudge, instead offering to check on the carriages while Uchimura speaks with her. He then heads to the training grounds, where Jinum is overseeing a session. There, Uchimura is impressed by the combat skills and high morale of her men. After the training, Uchimura asks about the Ogre tribe, but she reveals she doesn't know much, only that their leader, Ogre, is difficult to communicate with, making negotiations challenging. She offers no further help, stating she'd never work with Erminder, and asks Uchimura to leave. As he turns to leave, Uchimura is surprised to see Erminder behind him and questions why she's there and why she's upset. Erminder explains she came to check on him after finishing with the carriages but can't hold back her frustration on seeing Jinum. Eventually, Uchimura and Erminder reach the ogre's castle but are stopped at the gate and told to wait for permission to enter. Erminder finds it absurd that they are kept outside so long, but Uchimura, familiar with this tactic, explains that Ogre is trying to throw them off and disrupt negotiations. Erminder struggles to hold her temper, but before she acts, Ogre's assistant arrives and allows them inside. As they enter, Uchimura notices how worn the Ogre's armor looks. In the throne room, Erminder begins to speak, but Ogre interrupts, dismissing them. He declares he won't listen unless they surrender, demanding they kill their leader, the demon lord, as part of the deal. Erminder is furious and ready to explode, but Uchimura grabs her hand, urging her to stay calm. He explains that Ogre is baiting them and that reacting angrily would play into his hands. Uchimura politely informs Ogre that they'll step outside for a brief conversation. Outside, Erminder vents her frustration, cursing Ogre, but Uchimura reassures her that they must stay composed. Ogre's provocation is a tactic to avoid negotiations while blaming the failure on them. Now that she understands Ogre's intentions, Erminder tries to calm herself, though she remains upset by his insult to the demon lord. Suddenly, the Ogre's daughter, Oral, appears and introduces herself. She asks for their help in confronting her father and leads them to an empty room. There, she explains the Ogre tribe's dire situation. Their influence and strength among the demi-humans are fading, and many are struggling to find food. But Uchimura and Erminder had already sensed something was wrong from the Ogre's worn equipment and the cold atmosphere in the castle. Oral then reveals that Ogre is ill and his condition is worsening. If he dies under these circumstances, it could spell the end for the tribe. Desperate, she asks Uchimura for help. Though sympathetic, Uchimura scolds her for revealing such critical information so easily. As the chief's daughter, she must be cautious about whom she trusts. Oral insists she trusts Uchimura's character and then makes a shocking request. She asks him to marry her to save the tribe. Uchimura is stunned while Erminder fumes with anger. Oral, however, is serious. She believes that marrying someone as capable as Uchimura is the only way to secure the tribe's future. Uchimura tries to dissuade her, but Oral is determined, even offering to marry him immediately. Erminder firmly stops her. That night, Uchimura reflects on how to navigate the precarious situation. The ogres refuse to negotiate and the pressure is mounting. To clear his mind, he decides to visit a bar. Uchimura sat alone, observing as an imagined version of Erminder argue with the bartender over whether gorillas or lions were cooler. While Uchimura knew a gorilla would easily defeat a lion, Erminder insisted lions were superior because their group is called a pride. The debate snapped Uchimura out of his trance, and he devised a clever plan. The next morning, Uchimura woke Erminder early, apologized for the previous day, and asked for her help with a negotiation. Their first stop was crucial. If successful, it would lead Ogre to request a meeting. A week later, Uchimura and Erminder were summoned to the chief's throne room. As anticipated, Ogre was enraged upon learning that the other tribes had allied with the demon army. A week earlier, Uchimura had shared his strategy with Erminder. Instead of trying to convince the Ogre tribe directly, they would recruit smaller tribes. These tribes, struggling with food shortages, could be swayed with offers of support. Erminder doubted the plan's success, but it worked remarkably well. Uchimura had adapted a tactic he used back on Earth, targeting smaller companies to create demand from larger ones who wouldn't want to be left behind. The alliance between the surrounding demi-humans and the demon army triggered a reaction from Ogre. But Uchimura played the situation carefully, claiming the alliance with smaller groups was purely to aid them in their struggles. This enraged Ogre further, as he hadn't authorized any negotiations. Everything was unfolding as Uchimura planned. Ogre's anger made him easier to manipulate. To escalate matters, Uchimura subtly hinted that the alliances weren't his idea alone and mentioned Oral's involvement. Shocked by his daughter's actions, Ogre confronted her, but Oral explained it was necessary for the tribe's survival. The changing times, coupled with Ogre's age and declining health, demanded adaptation. Uchimura then proposed an alternative, a partnership instead of full allegiance to the demon army. Though it was a bluff, framing it as an equal arrangement appealed to the chief's pride. Ogre requested time to consider, and a few days later, Oral informed Uchimura that her father had agreed to the alliance. While Uchimura was pleased with the outcome, he had another task from the demon lord, choosing an assistant. He considered Erminder, but she misunderstood and became awkward around him. Meanwhile, Oral, grateful for his help in improving her father's diplomacy, offered to be his assistant. Seizing the opportunity, Uchimura accepted, which Oral eagerly agreed to. However, Erminder grew jealous and refused to acknowledge Uchimura, leaving him baffled by her behavior. Oral visits Uchimura in his office to report that the negotiation with the Bearman tribe was successful. She also informs him about an upcoming awards ceremony where he will be recognized for his contributions to the demon army's growth. Uchimura, who has never received an award before, expresses excitement about the occasion. Later, Erminder visits him, bringing along porridge, a staple food of demons. Uchimura finds the porridge bland and mentions his craving for meat. Hearing this, Erminder suggests they go hunting together. She also reveals that they have received a request to eliminate a dangerous magical beast that has killed 5 demi-humans. The orcs had attempted to deal with it but found it too strong, prompting them to seek the demon army's assistance. As they search, Erminder points out some mushrooms and explains that the orcs were attacked while trying to gather them. Suddenly, the beast appears behind them, startling Uchimura. Erminder assures him that she'll handle it. She delivers a powerful kick to the beast, but it quickly recovers and charges at her. Dodging its attack, she begins to pummel it, but Uchimura observes that her strikes lack the killing power needed to defeat it. He considers that she might need a weapon, but instead, Erminder decides to unleash her full strength. Her gauntlet transforms, and she warns that it will take time for her magic to recover afterward, but she believes this is the only way to defeat the beast. As it charges again, she grabs its tusks, twists its body, and kills it instantly. They bring the beast's remains to the orcs, who celebrate its defeat. One of the orcs offers Erminder the beast's leg, and Uchimura asks if she can cook it. She confidently says she can, planning to grill it over the fire. Expecting a well-prepared steak, Uchimura is shocked when she simply blasts the meat with her flames and declares it ready. Despite his skepticism, he tries the burnt meat and finds it nearly inedible. Spotting an oven nearby, Uchimura asks about it, but Erminder explains that it's expensive and resources like salt are scarce, making proper cooking a challenge. Undeterred, Uchimura decides to use the oven to cook the meat himself. Once prepared, he serves it to everyone, and they are amazed by how delicious it tastes. He offers to teach them how to cook properly, but Erminder warns that this could lower the status of the Big Four. Uchimura counters by explaining that a civilization's development can be measured by its dietary practices. He notes that the orcs' lack of culinary knowledge reflects their resource scarcity. Hermander agrees with his assessment, acknowledging that their country is weaker than the surrounding nations and that changes are necessary. Later that evening, as they prepare to return, Hermander conjures a fireball to light their path and keep wild beasts at bay. She mentions that demi-humans are unable to use magic, which makes Uchimura wonder if Sylphid is a demon or a demi-human. Hermander explains that she isn't certain because Sylphid never attends their meetings, but she assumes he's a demon since he can use magic. As they move forward, Uchimura brings up her recent battle with the magical beast, pointing out that she struggled due to a lack of proper equipment. He acknowledges that her magic takes time to recover and suggests she use weapons or wear armor instead of light clothing. Hermander becomes visibly upset and reveals that she finds his remarks insulting. Frustrated, she tells him to wait for the orcs to escort him back, explaining that his focus on efficiency clashes with demon culture. Before he can respond, she leaps away, leaving him wondering why she's angry. As he considers following her, the sound of wild beasts in the forest convinces him to retreat to the orc village. The next day, Uchimura reports to the Demon King, who questions why he didn't return with Hermander. Uchimura starts doubting his place among the Big Four, but the Demon King advises him to reconcile with her, believing it will broaden his perspective on the world. As Uchimura ponders Hermander's anger, he observes the city, noting the mix of demi-humans and demons. He becomes curious about why demons wear revealing outfits and remembers that they are the only ones capable of using magic. After some research, he learns that a muscular body is a symbol of pride for demons as they train their bodies to enhance their magical power. Their choice of revealing outfits reflects their desire to display their strength. Realizing this, Uchimura understands that his suggestion for Hermander to wear armor was offensive because it implied she should hide her body. Meanwhile, Hermander runs into Oral, who's chopping wood. She confides in Oral, worrying that Uchimura dislikes her because he didn't compliment her physique. Oral reassures her, pointing out that Uchimura doesn't think like demons and might have even misunderstood her outfit. She advises Hermander not to worry as Uchimura is a good person at heart. Later, Uchimura, enjoying a meal at the bar, compliments the bartender's cooking. As he sees the bartender smile at the praise, he has an epiphany. Rushing to find Hermander, he tells her she has an impressive physique. Hermander, thrilled by the compliment, admits she had always wanted him to acknowledge her body. However, the moment quickly turns awkward and Uchimura apologizes for offending her earlier. Hermander also apologizes for leaving him alone in the forest. Uchimura expresses his desire for her to be his partner, which flusters her as she interprets it as a romantic confession. However, it's revealed that he simply wants to continue working alongside her. At the awarding ceremony, the Demon King commends Uchimura for his successful negotiations with other races and presents him with a magic stone as a reward. Uchimura, however, insists that Hermander deserves it and offers it to her. Shocked, she misinterprets the gesture as a public proposal and scolds him for doing so in front of everyone. Meanwhile, Belinda, observing from a distance, realizes that the demons have finally come to respect Uchimura. Despite the praise and recognition Uchimura received, when he met his boss again, he knelt and pleaded for another chance, fearing he had overlooked something. The Demon King responded that Uchimura's real problem was his inability to acknowledge his own success and his lack of confidence. Changing the subject, the Demon King turned to the Foreign Affairs manager, asking for his opinion on the relationship between demons and demi-humans. The manager pointed out that the core issue was the disparity in abilities. Demons had an advantage in society due to their magic, leaving demi-humans marginalized. The Demon King agreed, noting that only a few races could wield magic, which was precisely why Uchimura was needed. His task was to find a way to grant magic to everyone, reducing inequality. Grateful for the opportunity, Uchimura remembered that while he lacked magic himself, the Demon King had entrusted him with a magic stone to study, with the help of Sylphid, the Storm Archmage. However, he had been warned that Sylphid could be difficult to work with. After the meeting, Uchimura left and ran into Hermander, who was snooping around and assumed his task was progressing well. Determined, Uchimura continued his research on how to harness the artifact's immense power. Meanwhile, Oral brought him tea, noticing how exhausted he looked from his extra workload. She suggested he leave early to avoid burnout, but Uchimura assured her he was just finishing up. He then asked her if demi-humans could gain magic like demons. She confirmed it was possible, but it required innate talent. The magic stone alone wouldn't be enough. Realizing he needed deeper knowledge, he decided to seek out Sylphid directly. Summoning his resolve, he made his way to the Archmage's quarters, but was met by his assistant, Belinda, who didn't recognize him at first. Embarrassed, she recalled their previous conversation and apologized for not recognizing a high-ranking officer. However, she informed him that Sylphid was absent. Uchimura protested, reminding her they had a scheduled meeting, but she stood firm, promising to notify him once Sylphid returned. As she attempted to shut the door, he blocked it with his foot, insisting they talk immediately. Meanwhile, Herminder continued watching from afar, irritated at the sight of Uchimura entering another woman's room. Belinda, growing impatient, urged him to be quick as she had other responsibilities. Wasting no time, Uchimura confronted her directly, stating that he suspected she was actually Sylphid. He backed up his claim with 3 reasons. First, she wore glasses, which was unusual for demons known for their exceptional physical abilities, suggesting they were merely for show. Second, there was no Belinda listed in the demon army's records. Third, their boss had warned him that Sylphid might disguise himself to avoid work. Cornered, Belinda finally admitted the truth. She was indeed one of the 4 generals. Uchimura then asked why he was hiding and dressing as a woman. Sylphid explained that in his true form, people constantly bombarded him with work. Plus, he had no interest in collaborating with humans, even under orders, since he had already dealt with a troublesome magic stone before and had no desire to do so again. However, since Uchimura had seen through his disguise, Sylphid decided to humor him. He placed a device on the table, its base made of a black mineral that conducted magic efficiently, embedded with yellow stones that allowed various spells. Sylphid had spent years developing it. Uchimura was eager to mass-produce it, but Sylphid warned him that each unit cost 10 million due to the rarity of magic stones. His final advice? Just give up. There was no feasible solution. Refusing to accept defeat, Uchimura devised a plan to outmaneuver the cunning mage. He realized costs could be drastically reduced by using a single magic stone instead of multiple ones, even if it meant the device could only cast 1 spell instead of several. The concept intrigued Sylphid, as it mirrored a strategy Uchimura had seen in his own world, where companies would remove features to create a cheaper version of a product. Sylphid agreed that simplifying the design would make the device more affordable, noting that no one had thought of it before. Seizing the opportunity, Uchimura handed his magic stone to the mage, requesting a prototype. Rising to the challenge, the Storm Archmage revealed a hidden workshop and declared that he would work through the night, dragging Uchimura along as his assistant. Meanwhile, outside, impatient and bored Ermander pounded on Sylphid's door, demanding someone open it. By morning, Uchimura was completely drained, while Sylphid beamed with pride at their success. He named the new invention Rosmarin, a single-spell magic stone now viable for mass production. Despite the sleepless night, the mage was eager to test it, volunteering Uchimura as the first subject. Barely functioning, Uchimura begged for a break, and Sylphid generously granted him exactly 1 hour. Exhausted, Uchimura dragged himself toward the door, desperate for a quick meal and some rest. Before he could leave, Ermander suddenly burst in, demanding to know why he had spent the night there. Her plan to interrogate him backfired. Just then, Sylphid, now clad in full Archmage robes and speaking in a deep, authoritative voice, commanded Ermander to take her chaos outside. Confused, she demanded to know where the woman had gone, but Sylphid insisted that it was just him and Uchimura. Amid the commotion, Lilim and Oral rushed in, calling for Ermander and Uchimura. A massive flock of enraged birds was attacking nearby villages, and the Demon King had ordered them to respond. Ermander was assigned to protect 3 villages, while Sylphid saw this as the perfect opportunity to test Rosmarin. Taking the new device to an open field, the mage prepared for a live trial. As some curious villagers wandered too close, Uchimura warned them to step back. Sylphid then handed him a Rosmarin stone and instructed him to summon a fireball. Though nervous, Uchimura obeyed, imagining the stone as an extension of himself, his energy flowing into it. To his amazement, he successfully conjured a fireball, just in time for the massive birds to descend upon the field. He launched several fireballs to fend them off, but when a bird attacked at close range, the device failed. Sylphid quickly pushed the creatures back with magic, giving Uchimura another chance to use the stone. However, it still refused to activate. After driving off the first wave, Sylphid concluded that Rosmarin couldn't handle the intensity of battle and deemed the experiment a failure. Later, the generals gathered in a tent with the village residents. As they discussed the attack, Ermander offhandedly remarked that the demi-humans seemed fragile. In response, Sylphid removed her helmet, revealing her face, and explained that while the villagers were weak and lived in poverty, they remained kind and joyful. This reminded her of why she had first begun developing magical devices. Born into a merchant elf family, she had left home and was later taken in by demi-humans who welcomed her into their struggling village. There no one could use magic, and everyone lived in hardship. Determined to help, she started working on magical devices, but eventually lost sight of her original goal. Looking at Uchimura, she reaffirmed that it was a scientist's duty to advance society, and making Rosmarin work was now a matter of honor. She also warned that the birds would likely return soon, making it urgent to fix the device. Determined to find a solution, Uchimura later found himself in his imaginary bar, where Erminder was happily eating cooked entrails. Reflecting on how food once considered waste was now valuable, he had an idea. Instead of using rosmarin for direct attacks, he realized the birds were sensitive to high-pitched sounds. The next time the flock appeared, he set 10 rosmarin stones on the ground and activated them, using minimal magic to produce a deterrent frequency. The strategy worked, driving the birds away without direct combat. A few days later, back at the castle, Uchimura reported to the Demon King that the new device could repel monsters without casting spells. Cheap and effective, it was an ideal tool for village defense. Impressed, the king ordered mass production for rural settlements. After the meeting, Uchimura thanked Sylphid for her help, but she insisted that she should be the one thanking him for restoring her sense of purpose. As a reward, she gifted him a combat magic device capable of firing 30 shots. Surprised, he asked when she had created it, and she simply replied, "I'm a genius after all." Eager to return to work, Uchimura barely had a moment to relax before Erminder burst in, frustrated that he hadn't kept her updated. She accused him of flirting with yet another woman. The next day at Uchimura's fictional bar, Erminder bothers a kid engrossed in his phone, admitting she envies him for living with his parents and spending all day online. The boy bluntly tells her she's annoying. Just then, Uchimura notices that the boy isn't watching animerecaps but rather investing in stocks, and judging by his expensive watch, he's no amateur. Unfazed, Erminder insists he take off his hood since they're indoors. When he ignores her, she raises her voice and even attempts to pull it off. Watching this, Uchimura reflects on the idea of removing a hood, not a literal one, but his own cautious mindset at work. Though he has dutifully followed the Demon King's orders and led responsibly, he realizes true growth means confronting problems head-on. Determined to take action, he heads to the kingdom's street market, glad he invited Erminder along. He also finds her striking in her dress, a stark contrast to her usual appearance. Meanwhile, Erminder feels flustered, recalling a conversation with Oral. When she mentioned being invited to the market, she admitted she had no idea how to handle a date, viewing it as a duel where both parties must wear their best armor to showcase their race's strength. She considered wearing something bold and revealing, but Oral warned her that Uchimura, as a human, might not see it the same way. Instead, she advised Erminder to wear modest clothing and tasteful accessories, arguing that dressing otherwise could be seen as undignified. Although Erminder initially felt that dressing plainly was even worse, she later appreciates Oral's advice, realizing it made the meeting with Uchimura go more smoothly. During their stroll, Uchimura mentions that today's research will be relatively easy since Erminder left her puzzle behind. When she asks for clarification, he explains that they're conducting market research, shattering the demon's expectations and causing her to flare up in frustration. But Uchimura calmly clarifies that the goal is to gather public opinion to inspire and improve the army. At the first stall, the vendor immediately recognizes Uchimura as one of the 4 great generals, which surprises him. The merchant explains that humans dressed in military attire at the royal castle are rare, and traders keep up with local news to avoid surprises. If Uchimura wants valuable information, he must pay attention to the trader network. Impressed by the presence of 2 generals, the vendor offers them a special deal on a pair of gold cups. Without hesitation, Uchimura accepts the offer, asking for a favor in return. Erminder, however, suspects he's buying the cups as an excuse to abandon the research and finally admit this was a date all along. But instead, Uchimura abruptly tells her to leave, stating that he has gathered enough information and samples to continue working. As he walks through the crowd, he takes notes on interesting findings, pausing a coffee shop to reflect on the alliance between demons, ogres, and minotaurs, which has led to cultural and talent exchanges. Erminder points out the rise in new businesses, but Uchimura counters by highlighting the downside: food shortages due to rapid population growth, especially the sharp increase in Gymu prices. Erminder recalls her attempt to negotiate with a Gymu store owner only to realize he wasn't making much profit either. Uchimura speculates that wholesalers are controlling the Gymu market and artificially inflating prices, forcing small merchants to raise their prices just to survive. He suggests Erminder speak with the wholesalers directly but warns that this is only a theory. The guild overseeing the wholesalers could pose challenges if they interfere, especially since the issue affects the entire nation. On top of that, the social divide between demons and demi-humans remains an ongoing concern that must be addressed gradually. With his research complete, Uchimura closes his notebook and announces the end of their market investigation. Noticing they still have some free time, he asks Erminder if she has any plans. She begins to imagine this as the start of a real date, until Genom suddenly interrupts, bringing up Ruya Day. When Uchimura asks about it, the demi-human explains that it's a traditional celebration where people exchange gifts with those they value. Curious, he asks if Junome plans to give something to the army, but she smirks and jokes that she wouldn't bother giving anything to a grumpy demon. Suddenly, a pair of demi-humans approach the generals, pleading for help to save their struggling shop. They lead Uchimura and the others to their food stand, explaining that they've been selling chumozu for years, but business has been declining. A merchant named Budagarian suggested they lower their prices to stay competitive. Trusting his advice, they took a large order from him and worked tirelessly to fulfill it. However, on the day of delivery, Budagarian claimed he hadn't realized chumozu needed to be eaten the same day and refused to accept the order, leaving the couple with a massive loss. Hearing this, Junome comments that Uchimura is not only skilled in negotiations but also an excellent cook, so he might have a solution. But Uchimura samples a chumozu from their tray and quickly decides to help. First, he outlines the goal. They need to sell 300 pieces, the amount they would normally sell in 2 months. He analyzes the taste, noting that it resembles Japanese mochi but lacks distinct features. However, its mild flavor could be an advantage as mochi pairs well with various dishes. To determine the best way to market it, Uchimura learns that their primary customers are older, but this group doesn't actually enjoy chumozu. He advises the vendors to develop a new recipe while sending Ermander to visit other shops for inspiration. Later, Uchimura returns to the market, gathers a crowd by beating a drum, and announces a Ruya Day event featuring traditional games like target shooting, beetle wrestling, and hit the mole. But Uchimura then shares the legend behind Ruya Day, a tale of a beautiful girl and a chumozu vendor who fell in love. However, a jealous king forcibly separated them. Despite this, they continued meeting in secret on nights of the new moon. One such night during a Ruya festival, they shared chumozu and wished to be together forever. Moved by their love, the gods granted their wish, transforming them into stars and letting them live together in the heavens. Uchimura then adds that tonight is also a new moon, encouraging everyone to share chumozu with their loved ones and make a wish. Seeing the public's enthusiastic response, Uchimura recalls how asking Junome about Ruya Day and blending it with festive elements from Christmas and Halloween was key to making the event a success. He then challenges the couple to reveal their new chumozu recipe, now featuring vibrant rainbow colors. Young customers eagerly buy the treat, and Ermander realizes that repositioning the target audience was the key to reviving sales. As time passes, old markets can fade, but attracting a new demographic can breathe life back into a product. Sales soar, and Uchimura even dreams of expanding into a chain of chumozu shops. After a while, the grateful couple thanks Uchimura and Ermander for their help. However, Uchimura points out that Ermander also played a major role by promoting the shop during the event, though she finds it irritating when he mentions her rival. He adds that her efforts have helped shift many demi-humans' perceptions of demons. In gratitude, the couple presents them with a special collection of rainbow-colored chumozu. As they sit together, Uchimura finally reveals the reason he purchased the gold cups earlier. Ermander, feeling a moment of anticipation, wonders if this is the proposal she has been waiting for. Unsure of what to do, she decides to let things play out naturally. However, when Uchimura remains silent, she awkwardly asks what he would wish for while eating chumozu. Without hesitation, he replies that he hopes their next mission succeeds. Frustrated, Ermander scolds him for being a workaholic. Upon returning to the castle, the foreign affairs manager reports to the supreme leader about his research on a neighboring nation known as the Land of Gold, famous for its vast gold reserves. He proposes targeting the land for trade, emphasizing that dealing with wealthy nations is crucial for military strategy. The council suggests offering rosmarin as a trade good, but Uchimura firmly insists that such technology should remain a secret. The Lord argues that their discoveries are unique and nearly impossible to replicate, believing their talents, including Uchimura's, will ensure their success. However, the Demon King warns them to proceed with caution, as the ruler of the Land of Gold is known to be dangerous. The next day, Uchimura reflects on how just months ago he joined the demonic army, and now his first official mission as one of the 4 demons has arrived. While waiting by the carriage, he makes his final preparations. Ermander offers to escort him, warning that the Rampage King, though young and skilled, is notoriously unpredictable. Rumors claim he once fed a merchant to crocodiles for selling fake goods. Despite his unease, Uchimura sticks to his plan and departs alone. Ermander fusses over him like a mother, reminding him to bring his wallet, stop the carriage if unwell, and reject any offered maidens. Hours later, he arrives in the Land of Gold, a bustling and prosperous kingdom. The demonic army, once focused on grain exports, now seeks high-value trade deals to support its growing population. Aware of his mission's significance, Uchimura feels the weight of responsibility as he meets the Rampage King, a young demon draped in gold. As Uchimura kneels and begins his introduction, the king abruptly cuts him off, stating his full name and rank as if insulted by the formality. Chimera notes that the monarch lives up to his difficult and domineering reputation. With blazing eyes, the king demands to know why Chimera hadn't visited sooner, given that his probation in the demonic army ended months ago. The general bows even lower, apologizing while realizing that negotiations are a battle of dominance, one the king refuses to lose. Finally, the ruler gets to the point, asking about Chimera's purpose. The general presents exquisite silver, but the king, offended, obliterates it with lightning. After all, offering silver to the ruler of a land of gold is an insult. Without missing a beat, Chimera bows again and unveils a second gift, the rosmarin, a magical stone that repels monsters. Since only the demonic army has used it, the Rampage Kingdom would be the first outsider to acquire it, a crucial asset for protecting gold mines. The king immediately recognizes its potential, noting that it could significantly reduce the need for heavily armed guards. To test the stone, he releases a giant crocodile at Chimera. Terrified but determined, Chimera activates the rosmarin, regretting that this kingdom offers crocodiles instead of beautiful maidens. Fortunately, the stone works, repelling the beast, which turns toward the king instead. Reacting swiftly, Chimera prepares a fireball, but the king strikes first, frying the creature with lightning. Impressed, he acknowledges Chimera's courage and loyalty, agreeing to purchase the stones. He then places an enormous pile of gold before the general, stating that each bar is worth 7 million G. The king inquires about production capacity, and Chimera guarantees 200 rosmarin within a month. However, the ruler demands delivery within a week, promising great rewards if humans perform well. 3 heaps of gold bars are dumped before Chimera as the king demands all of the demonic army's magical stones. With the deal secured, Chimera must now convince Sylphid to accelerate production. However, she is exasperated. Rosmarin manufacturing is still in its early stages and cannot meet such a massive demand. The Archmage warns that forcing this could destabilize the demonic army. But Chimera, however, notes that resources have stabilized after recovering devastated areas, making it possible to focus on rosmarin production. With no choice, Sylphid reluctantly agrees. Suddenly, a messenger from the Rampage King arrives, placing yet another order for 100 more stones. As Chimera relaxes in his office, Oral serves him tea and praises his success in securing 300 rosmarin orders. Curious about their value, she asks for details, and he informs her that each stone costs 500,000 G, making the total worth 150 million G. Astonished, the Ober marvels at how a human managed such a lucrative deal. Thuma explains that he used the anchoring effect, a psychological tactic where people rely on initial information to shape their judgments. Since magical devices have no fixed market price, sellers can set their own rates. By first presenting the king with expensive silver items, knowing he would destroy them, Chimera created the illusion that whatever came next had immense value. Impressed, Oral promises to fulfill the order. Just then, a servant of the Rampage King arrives with another request minus 100 more rosmarin. But Chimera can already imagine Sylphid's frustration, which is confirmed when she crosses her arms in discontent. However, instead of complaining, she orders more workers to increase production. After intense labor, the first batch of 200 stones is successfully shipped. To further motivate the workers, another 200 are soon sent to the Land of Gold. Reflecting in his office, Chimera realizes that once the rosmarin's magic depletes, replacements will be needed, ensuring a steady demand from the king. Smirking, he envisions himself at a bar in his imagined world, celebrating with food and drinks. He offers the owner a drink, who gladly accepts a scotch on the rocks. However, as Chimera takes a sip, his glass suddenly cracks, snapping him back to reality. At that moment, Oral bursts into the room, panicked. Every rosmarin order has been cancelled. Rushing to investigate, Chimera discovers that a merchant is selling the same goods for half the price. Meanwhile, Oral deals with a craftsman left with unused materials, and elsewhere in the castle, frustrated demi-humans complain about outdated weapons, blaming poor budgeting. Some suspect that Chimera has been squandering funds on rosmarin. Jome urges his comrades to stay calm, but whispers spread that business struggles are affecting everyone. Citizens speak of the kingdom's economic hardship. Gold is becoming scarce, forcing some to trade with other currencies, disrupting foreign markets. Seeing the cancelled order, Chimera reflects on his failure, a familiar sense of workplace shame weighing on him. Determined, he reports to the Demon Lord, taking full responsibility. However, the Demon Lord reminds him that mistakes are natural. What matters is making amends. Encouraged, Chimera sets out to apologize to military leaders, but Chimera brushes him off, and Sylphid, absorbed in her book, remains indifferent. As he ponders his next move, he is suddenly captured and tossed into a sack. Moments later, he finds himself outside the castle. Panicked, he escapes and steadies his breath. Nearby, General Ermander offers him some meat. Suspicious, Chimera asks if she's trying to comfort him. Flustered but sincere, she admits that he has been helpful. As they share the moment, a demon moves closer to Uchimura, who allows it. Before she can settle in, Oral arrives with fruit, breaking the mood. Erminder quickly masks her emotions and welcomes him instead. After eating, the girls doze off and Uchimura covers them with blankets, appreciating their friendship. Recalling the demon lord's words, he vows to set things right. Meanwhile, in the Rampage Kingdom, the ruler thanks merchant Budagarian for providing high-quality goods at low prices. The pig-like trader affirms his loyalty to the sovereign of the land of gold, but keeps his methods secret. In the next scene, the former employee explains how to prevent repeating mistakes, emphasizing the need to identify and address the root cause, which requires a full understanding of the situation. Meanwhile, Uchimura notices that rosmarin is half price and briefly considers the possibility of someone analyzing its composition, but dismisses it due to time constraints. Seeking clarity, he returns to his imaginary bar, where he engages in a word game with the owner. Suddenly, Sylphid appears, requesting silence as she plays the guitar. The melody moves Uchimura, prompting him to reflect on the beauty of a wanderer's performance. Snapping back to reality, he deduces that the rosmarin was delivered to a castle merchant, likely in exchange for gold from the demon lord's servant. Soon after, Erminder storms in, frustrated that the rosmarin failed. Instinctively, Uchimura's professional mindset activates, treating it as a defective product case. The demoness takes him to the testing site, where a magical beast has caused havoc. A villager complains that the enchanted stone, believed to be a key weapon of the demon army, was ineffective, assuming there was no threat. Another villager urges immediate action before food supplies run out, prompting the Chimera to investigate. Erminder grumbles that similar issues plague other villages as well. Upon inspection, Uchimura notices the rosmarin is missing and orders checks at all installation sites. Every location lacks rosmarin, with no magical stones remaining. Back in his office, he concludes that if villagers have stolen only a few, some would still be left, yet none remain. He calls Erminder and Oral to gather data on all affected villages. That night, he secretly visits a quiet village, puzzling Erminder but exuding confidence. Urging silence to avoid detection, he observes a hooded figure sneaking in to steal a rosmarin, soon joined by an accomplice. But Chimera and Erminder ambush them. When confronted, one thief attacks, but Erminder swiftly takes them down and subdues the accomplice. Realizing they can't win against the general, the thieves flee, but Erminder's pursuit is halted by Uchimura, who assures her that hidden explosives will deal with the matter. Meanwhile, in the Fury Kingdom, Budagaria informs the king of another rosmarin shipment. The ruler, impressed by the merchant's efficiency, acknowledges his success in reproducing the demon army's secret weapon while scaling up production. Budagarian humbly reaffirms his commitment to quality. Strolling through the kingdom, he reflects on his reputation as both the prophet and the merchant of death. His fortune stems from a simple strategy: buying low and selling high. Spotting valuable goods before competitors is key. When he learned of the demon army's trade with the Fury Kingdom, he saw an opportunity. Though small, the nation is ruled by the formidable demon lord, and where he goes, profit follows. The merchant was captivated by the army's rare portable supplies, but replicating rosmarin proved difficult even for master craftsmen. Most would have given up, but Budagarian, a true merchant, finds ways to sell products directly or otherwise. If production is impossible, theft remains an option. He also acknowledges the demon army's merchants, whether smugglers or those developing the magical repellent. Some might call him a scoundrel, but in business, morality is secondary. While traveling, Budagarian's carriage is halted by two Fury Kingdom guards executing the king's arrest warrant. Brought before the ruler, he watches in fear as the king crushes a rosmarin stone, enraged by its poor quality. Sweating, Budagarian insists it's a mistake. He would never sell defective goods to his majesty. However, as lightning crackles around the furious king, he demands an explanation. Internally, Budagarian panics. He had merely resold stolen stones, assuming them to be genuine. Had he been deceived? Before he can respond, the king calls for someone who can clarify the situation. Uchimura, the demon army's top general, known for securing a peace deal with the miners. To Budagarian, Uchimura is undeniably the greatest threat to the demonic army. The foreign agent soon accuses him of stealing the rosmarin, but Uchimura, unwilling to abandon those who rely on him for protection, had already devised a countermeasure. He created identically yet powerless replicas that broke easily. The Kingdom of Fury, convinced of their authenticity, failed to distinguish them from the real ones. With Sylphid's crucial help, Uchimura ensured their flawless replication. Though the scientists initially protested the tight deadline, they eventually agreed, on the condition that they receive a cake, claiming that thinking required sugar. Using clues from villagers, Uchimura predicted the thieves' next target and had the army scatter replicas across potential villages. Since only the demonic army possessed them, the foreign agent questioned how Budagarian obtained one. Confronted with this irrefutable evidence, the merchant froze, realizing he was trapped. Facing the king, he resorted to desperate pleading, insisting it was all a misunderstanding. Despite the humiliation, Budagarian knows survival means a chance to start over. As a last-ditch effort, he offers his fortune in atonement, but the king has already sentenced him to death. Lightning forms a cage around him as a massive crocodile lunges. As it tears through his clothes, his only thought is survival. Just before the beast strikes, an explosion erupts inside its mouth. Yuchimura had intervened. Outraged, the king demands to know why, especially since Yuchimura was the one who reported the crime. Summoning twin dragon heads crackling with lightning, he demands an explanation. But Yuchimura warns that Budagarian's death would doom the kingdom of fury. Skeptical, the king asks why a mere merchant is so crucial. Yuchimura then reveals the secret of the orange powder essential for extracting gold, a resource vital to the kingdom's survival. Budagarian is the only trader with access to it, as the distant land of Toki strictly controls its supply. In the past, brutal wars were fought over this rare substance, forcing Toki to implement rigid trade laws. Intrigued, the king asks how Yuchimura knows this. He explains that he once investigated whether his homeland could produce gold only to learn it could not. Many nations suffered during those past wars, but Budagarian, undeterred, ventured into war zones to provide aid, earning him the title Merchant of Death. Some grateful nations granted him exclusive trade rights, including access to Toki's orange powder. Losing him would be a severe blow to Fury. The king questions why Yuchimura is so determined to save a rival trader, and even Budagarian is stunned by his effort. But Yuchimura, however, remains unfazed. Helping others simply comes naturally to him, as life isn't just about wealth. Amused, the king yawns and waves them off, claiming he's too tired to deal with it. As they leave, Yuchimura asks about Budagarian's fate, but the king offers no answer. Outside, Yuchimura lets out a relieved sigh, while Budagarian eyes him with suspicion. Then, unexpectedly, Yuchimura breaks down, admitting he was terrified and even asks to lean on Budagarian's shoulder for support. As they walk, Oral arrives with several hooded women who rush toward Budagarian, calling him father. Stunned, he turns to Oral, who reveals that Yuchimura had arranged for his daughters to be brought there after learning about his past, how he had taken in orphans from war zones and given them a future. Overwhelmed, Budagarian expresses his gratitude. Later, to his surprise, Yuchimura grants him permission to sell Rosemarin. Bewildered, Budagarian asks why, considering their past conflict. But Yuchimura explains that he needs a reliable merchant to distribute the stones in distant markets. Touched by this unexpected kindness, Budagarian resolves to change, for his daughter's sake. He then shares critical intelligence from a trading partner in the Demon King's Guild. This then marks the end of today's anime recap. If you enjoyed the video and want more of it, please support the channel by leaving a like and subscribe. Let's help us reach our current goal of 20,000 subscribers.